Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us in our 365 days with Jesus, also known as Reading the Bible in a Year Challenge. We're once again reading the Bible in a sequential order, and I'm thrilled to say today, on March 28, 2021, we're finally in the second book of Samuel, and today's assigned Bible reading chapters are chapters 1, 2, and 3. I apologize if my demeanor is a little low or if my voice isn't as up to par as normally it is. I've been a little under the weather, but by God's grace, I'm feeling a lot better. So thank you, God. And let's begin. If you see me kind of like, I have seasonal allergies. So um, if you see me scratch my face a little, I apologize for that. So in the book of Second Samuel chapter 1, we learned that David finds out that Saul, Jonathan, and the sons of Saul are dead, right? Through the war that the Philistines had. We discussed that in our previous video with our brother Luis. So thank you, Luis, for that. Um, and it's sad because David saw Jonathan as his best friend, kind of like a brother, like a soul brother, or like a soul sister. Have you guys had those friendships that feels like you're so connected with them in a much more deeper level, like a spiritual level? This is how David and Jonathan associated with each other. So it was very sad for David. So they did mourn, and David found that there was this person. I can't pronounce his name, but there was a family who took the bodies or the corpses, the mutilated corpses, to be honest, because the Philistines mutilated and like cut their bodies. Thankfully they're dead, but still it's just disgusting. In our previous video, we discussed that last chapter of the first book of Samuel. There was a family who felt very grateful towards Saul because Saul helped this family. I think the last part of the name is like Gilead. I'm trying to locate it right now in the chapter, so if I do find it, I will definitely keep you guys posted on that. I don't see it here. But anyways, maybe it's in the next chapter, and then we will go through that. So David was very grateful that this family took Saul and Jonathan's bodies and buried it properly. Um and David was so grateful because he said, Saul was God's anointed, and you can't touch someone that's anointed by God. So David is a person of great honor and respect, I think, in terms of that. And there's a reason why I'm saying in terms of that. You'll find out later why I say that. But he had that honor, that gratitude. So I really appreciate that from David. And there was a certain man, a Amalekite, who goes and tells David that, hey, Saul is dead, Jonathan's dead. And he's like, how do you know? He's like, I was a witness, and here's Saul's clothing and like different weapons and armor that he brought forth to David. And then there was like, so how did you know he's dead? He's like, well, I'm bringing this to you as physical evidence. Also, I saw, because Saul did ask him to kill him, because he's like, I don't want any Philistine to touch me or kill me. I rather you, like his whole army of Israel were dying. He's like, if I'm gonna die, I'd rather an Israelite kill me than a Philistine. But this Amalekite, we don't know his name, doesn't do it because he's like, no, I can't do it. So Saul completes suicide. He puts like his sword on him, and he purposely falls on the sword, and really horrible death. And his armor bearer felt like that much respect for him, and he was like, if my captain falls, I will fall too. So he also completed suicide, while the Amalekite was able to run away from the Philistines and give this news to David. Now David, they mourn one day for Jonathan, and because they're in a war, they can't be mourning as many days as normally they would. So the next day he tells the Amalekite, wait a minute, you were strong enough to kill Saul, and how dare you put a knife into God's anointed, right? Because the Amalekite had lied to David, like, hey, I'm the one who killed him. But if you read the last chapter, right, or the last chapters of the first book of Samuel, we see that Saul completed suicide. No one killed him because he asked them to kill him and he couldn't. Very interesting. So he actually puts this Malachite to death because he's like, you killed God's anointed, and it was God's job if he was gonna die, that he was gonna allow how he was gonna die. Basically, God can kill Saul, not you, not a human. So it was sad. This the beginning is a little treacherous, and then what's nice is that David does this a dirge or funeral song. I apologize for mispronouncing it. Dirge, and he makes it really nice. And it's also in the book of Jashar. And the book of Jashar, the Amplified Commentary says this is an early poetic account of the wars of Israel and the heroic acts of the warriors. So that was nice. He gives them a beautiful poem, but I love the part with Jonathan because for him, he's like, your love toward me was more wonderful than the love of a woman. Now, I know a lot of critics may have certain comments to say of that. However, I see this as good and bad, right? Good and negative feedback. I saw this as like, wow, how a friendship or that soul tie of a relationship could transcend even other relationships that you think are in priority. So I found that remarkable. Now, now we're in the second chapter of the second book of Samuel, and I found the family that took the corpses of Samuel and Jonathan and the other sons because the Philistines had plastered these bodies into this wall and basically did stuff that they mutilated the bodies, in other words. And it was Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul and his family properly, because he Jabesh Gilead was saved from by Saul earlier in the first book of Samuel because there was a war and Saul saved him. So it was like he did it as a gratitude, like, oh my gosh, how dare the Philistines put his body like this? Let me bury it properly. And David blessed him and is like, hey, go in peace. He's like, may God repay you for this loving kindness. Like, he honored this family a lot. Um and to just be blessed because of what he did. So he gave him that blessing. Um Now Ishbosheth is this one of the, I think the only son left of Saul that's alive. Abner, who was Saul's loyal commander in chief, he puts this Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, to be king of Israel. Now David is now king of Judah. So Israel and Judah, they're all Israel, but I guess the tribe of Judah was so great that they had its own nation. And if there's any Bible scholars who want to correct me on that, please do in the comments. But that is from what I've understand as I was reading this book. And there was a civil war because basically whoever was loyal to the house of Saul, or any one family of the house of Saul, is at war against the house of David or all of his family. And now there was a I want to one of the sons of Zariah, and Zariah is the half sister of David. Oh, Ashashel. Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to get the name right. I was going to mix up two names, Joab and Ashashel. So Ashashel, who is the blood relative of David, because it's his half nephew, you could say, right? He's the half sister of David, so half nephew. Ashashel starts to chase Abner, and Abner's a very strong warrior. He was like one of Saul's mightiest warrior. I'm surprised he also didn't try with Goliath. Goliath was a whole different story, but he there's actually, I think, Proverbs and Psalms, and there was poems, at least the Amplified Bible Commentary mentions that Abner's strength and his military intelligence was very, very grand, and it was very admirable. Even David admired him and had this great respect for him, even though he was like Team Saul, if you want to go Team Saul, Team David. So, but Ashashel, or David's half nephew, starts to pursue Abner, trying to like kill him, to like destroy him. So Abner looks behind, right? He's like, someone's following me. Let me see. He looks to the right, to the left. He's like, is that you, Ashashel? Like, I've noticed you. And Ashashel, yeah, it's I. So Abner said to him, turn to your right or to your left and grab one of the young men, take his armor for yourself. But Ashashel is not willing to turn away from pursuing Abner. So he's like, hey, take some of the military clothing, whatever it is you need. Like, he probably thought he needed that. This is verse 21 in the second book of Samuel, chapter 2. But Abner repeated again, turn away from following me. Why should I have to strike you to the ground? Like, if you're going to keep pursuing me, I'm going to have to defend myself because you're doing it to kill me. How would I be able to face Joab, your brother? Right? And because Joab and him, they were military like colleagues. How am I going to look at him in the eye if I have to kill you? But Ashahel refused to turn away. So Abner struck him in the abdomen with the very end of his spear. The spear came out of his back and he fell there and died right there. Obviously, it's like having a sword penetrate all your body. So Ashahel fell and died. So now Joab and Abishai, so Ashael's brothers or the nephews, half nephews of David, right? They want to pursue Abner in revenge. Um, so when I was first reading it, I thought Abner purposely killed Asahel because I thought he was pursuing him, but I wasn't too sure. When I was reading Pursue, I was like, well, he was trying to follow him, like, maybe to see where he's going or needed something. But as I was reading, I'm like, oh wait, no, he is providing him clothes, and he's still like, hey, take this and go, and tell him please go. Like, you're still following me. I'm feeling threatened. So now I understood. Basically, what Abner did was self-defense. If someone's trying to kill you, human instinct is to defend yourself, preserve your life, right? So there, stop so then Abner calls to Joab, Ashahel's brother. Must the sword devour forever? Do you not know that it will be bitter in the end? How long will it be before you tell people to stop pursuing their brothers? Joab said, as God lives, if you had not spoken, then the people certainly would have stopped pursuing their brothers in the morning. So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the people halted, no longer pursued Israel, right? Because remember, David is the king of Judah, so I guess this is like Judah versus Israel. Nor did they fight anymore. Then Abner, his men, went through the Arabah, or the desert region, all that night, crossed the Jordan, went through Bithron, and walked the whole morning, came to Mahanaim, where Ishbosheth ruled Israel. But Joab returned from pursuing Abner. He had gathered all the people together. 19 of David's servants were missing, besides Asahel, but the servants of David had struck down many of Benjamin and Abner's men, so that 360 men died. They picked the body of Asahel and buried him in the tomb of his father in Bethlehem. Then Joab and his men walked all night, and they arrived in Hebron at daybreak. This is where it gets a little sad. So the house of David gets stronger, right? He has 6 sons with these 6 different wives. This is why I said that specific part that David only had honor and integrity in with Jonathan, like having that covenant with Jonathan, and also showing that honor and integrity with Abner and other people that I mentioned before. But he has 6 wives, so in that aspect, I don't think that's honorable. That is probably my bias and perspective, right? And I'm sure God does not approve polygamy, as he has mentioned before in the Old Testament. Anyway, Abner joins David. So Abner is telling him, listen, David, I'm going to, I want to join with you. I want to be one of your military leaders. Can I? And David's like, of course, like you're one of the wisest men of the military for Saul. If you want to be with me, why not? Now, this is a very interesting thing where Ishbosheth, or the Saul's son who's king of Israel, actually starts to blame Abner, like, hey, why did you go and sleep with my father's concubine? So when someone would do that, or has that intention, or has that action, commits that crime in a way, that act of sexual relations with a king's wife or a king's concubine, you're kind of saying, I'm the next in throne. You're threatening the throne. However, Abner was very angry. He says, how am I like a dog's head? Am I like this despicable traitor? I've always been loyal to Saul, and now I even made you, his only alive son, king of Israel. And I think this was probably as a result, since I don't know, I had the words in my mind, but I'm not sure as to why he would say that. Maybe he saw this concubine being nice with him. I don't know. He probably saw something, heard some maybe gossip, and then decides to blame it. Oh, Abner, is it true that I'm sure you're the one sleeping with my dad's concubine? But Abner claims it's not true. I've shown you loyalty, I've shown you kindness, and I don't think it's true either. But I'm not too sure. Only God will know. Um, so, and Ishbosheth, he was very angry at Abner, so Ishbosheth didn't say anything else to Abner because he was afraid of him. Now, Abner sent messages to David, who was in his place at Hebron, verse 12, saying, "Who is the land? Make your covenant treaty with me. Hold my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel over to you." Now he's gonna help David. I guess he was upset with Ishbosheth blaming him for something he didn't do. He's like, "All right, I'll give it to all David. Saul's dead." Like at this point, it is David next in line. So, but David told Abner, through Ishbosheth, "Hey, I want my wife Michal," which is Saul's daughter, his first wife, because Saul had promised him, and then he took Michal and gave her to a different man. And it's kind of sad because her now current husband, her second husband, is crying because he loves her. It's like, no, don't leave. But he had to let her go because, king is whatever the king says. Very interesting how the story of David takes from him with Goliath till now, right? And Joab, so I'm just gonna fast forward a little in the chapter. Joab, one of the brothers of Ashalel, who was murdered by Abner in self-defense, however, he kills Abner. He takes him, without weapons. Like he takes him in a very vulnerable moment past like the middle of the gate to the city, and he struck Abner in the abdomen, and then he died to avenge the blood of Ashalel. But this was an act of murder, as the Amplified Version says, not justifiable revenge, because Abner had killed Asahel in self-defense during a battle. So David was very upset, and he's like, you know what? Let that guilt fall upon my nephew, and my nephew's family, Joab and his family, and, let them be cursed with all these different curses he mentioned, like different diseases. And David mourns for him because he was a great warrior. He did amazing stuff for King Saul, like military intelligence wise, and the people mourn with him. He didn't eat a whole day. He was like, "I'm gonna fast. I'm not eating a whole day," and then he was very sad. Like that day, he lost a prince. Right? He lost one of his nephews, and he lost a great military man. Very, very sad. And now we will continue tomorrow with chapters, I believe, 4 through 7 or 4 through 6 in the book of 2 Samuel. And just something to reflect on is it was a lot of drama, I would say, in these chapters. I would say, how can you show your honor and your integrity? And I know there's even people, believers of God and those who don't believe in God, who show their honor and integrity different or even sometimes similar. How do you show your honor and integrity each day? And if you're not sure, who can you ask to help you, right? And I think the best answer to that second question is reading God's word. By showing your honor and integrity, is that you're showing gratitude towards people, you're respect people, right? Their barriers, respecting what their needs are, respecting their words, and getting along with everyone. And also showing honor to yourself, right? And to your morals and principles. So I think that is something I noticed throughout the chapters, is honor and integrity. And it varies, right? Just like with David, I said, it varies throughout, and it varies in our lives, and it varies throughout the Bible. It varies throughout humanity. And I hope we could keep it as consistent as possible with God's help. So thank you, and have a great night or a great afternoon, great day, wherever you may be tuning in from. See you all tomorrow.